Welcome to All Strut No Fret. I'm Dr. Anna Camerali and I have a one-shot for you today chosen especially for Pride Month. Remember, a one-shot is when I drink a shot and then get one shot at telling you the plot of an early modern play, and today's is The Martial Maid, otherwise known as Love's Cure, which is by John Fletcher and Philip Massinger from around 1615. And because this play is set in Old Seville, my shot today is this unwise but pretty glass of spiced rum. Happy Pride Month. I'll get straight into it. Mm. I don't think that was ever supposed to be drunk as a shot, but but there we are. Love's Cure. Love's Cure is set in Seville. So therefore it's a couple of English blokes' idea of what the Spanish are like. It's full of revenge and honour and things like that. So therefore we are plunged straight into the action with some very handy exposition that lets us know that a civilian novel, as in from Seville, not a civilian, because Martial, a civilian nobleman called Alvarez has been exiled from Seville for 20 years after killing another nobleman in a duel. The news has just come in that he has been pardoned and will be returning. But it's not because of anything he's done. No, he's been pardoned because his son performed such an impressive feat of courage and swordsmanship and on horseback, rescuing a general at the siege of Ostend all by himself, and was so impressive in this that the Infanta granted him any boon he wished, and he asked for his father to be pardoned. So this news comes to us via a chap called Lamoral, who is telling his friend Vitelli, and it turns out that Vitelli is the mortal enemy of Alvarez, as it is his uncle that Alvarez killed in that fateful duel 20 years ago. So he swears vengeance, and then the scene shifts to the home of Alvarez, where we meet his wife Eugenia and what appears to be his daughter. However, we find out via their steward. So a steward is sort of like the manager of the estate. Bobadilla, he keeps turning up and facilitating the plot, so we should probably know him. He lets us know straight away that this apparent daughter is in fact a son whose real name is Lucio. And what happened was, when Alvarez went into exile, Eugenia was pregnant. When she had the baby, she raised the baby as a daughter in order to keep the son safe from people like Vitelli, who might want to wreak revenge. So they get word that husband is coming home. They're very delighted. They run off to prepare for this. As they leave the stage, the aforementioned Alvarez enters with his son, but you've guessed it, this is not, in fact, it wasn't his son at any time all along. It was his daughter, whose real name is Clara, though she's been going under the name of Lucio. And similarly, Clara left with her father as a very tiny child when he went into exile, and he raised her as a son to keep her safe because they were traveling out in the world just all alone together. So he tells her that now they're back home, she's going to have to give up breeches, put on a frock, and she says, I'm not happy about that, but I will obey you and do whatever you instruct me to, but I'm not going to like it. And then Eugenia and the real Lucio come in. Eugenia and Alvarez are thrilled to see each other again for the first time in 20 years. But before they get the chance to talk about the kids, there is a ruckus outside. Now, Clara and her dad had met, they mentioned that they'd left their friend, Saavedra. They'd left Saavedra on the way to catch them up because he met some friends on the way into town. And Saavedra, having made his way to Alvarez's house, encounters Vitelli and Vitelli's men, and they are already in the heat of a frantic sword fight, which comes all the way into the house. A lot of sword fighting in the house here. It's probably one of those lovely civilian courtyardy mansions. And so they all arrive on the doorstep. Clara, who is still in her man's attire, says to Saavedra and her dad, you deal with Vitelli, I'll get rid of these guys. So Vitelli sort of chases them off, and she drives off all Vitelli's men. And then her father, Saavedra, and Vitelli come back on, still fighting. And now she's got rid of the others. She thinks it's dishonorable for her father and friend to be trying to kill this guy in their home while they outnumber him. So she actually draws on the side of Vitelli and saves him and says, off you go. It wouldn't be honourable for us to kill you under these circumstances, so I'm granting you passage. And Vitelli leaves. Now, the only outcome from this duel at this point is, well, Eugenia and Lucio, who have run off in fright at all this happening, they come back on, and the parents look at the kids and they go, yeah, we're going to have to fix this. So they order the children to head off and swap their attire and get back to who they're meant to be. Now, scene now switches to a bunch of supposedly comic low-life characters, and they don't really do very much at this point except let us know that Vitelli has a mistress called Malroda who has recently arrived from Madrid. Now, they mention a corrupt constable in town who is zealous about closing down the brothels only so he can run one without competitors from his own home. And Vitelli has installed Malroda at this man's house. So then we switch back to the house of Alvarez, where Clara and Lucio have put on their proper attire, but are doing very badly at it. They are completely unused and unsuited to performing the roles of their properly assigned, in inverted commas, their genders. So what the parents have decided to do about this is that they have hired a fencing master called Piorato to train Lucio. Now, in the previous scene, we've actually found out that Malroda, Vitelli's mistress, remember, is actually not that keen on Vitelli at all. He's just a meal ticket. She's actually in love with Piorato. But Piorato has been hired to train Lucio. They go off stage to do that. And what they're going to do to fix Clara is have Saavedra court her. Now, the guy makes such a hash of it that she gets so infuriated that she ends up attacking him. And then Piorato comes on, supposedly training Lucio, but basically just whipping him because Lucio is so frightened and keeps running away. And Clara is furious at this, and so ends up attacking Piorato and saving her brother. One thing I love about this bit is Piorato calls her Bradamante, which he obviously thinks is an insult, but it's actually really great because Bradamante was a lady knight from the Italian poem Orlando Furioso, and no one ever tells that woman to stop being a knight. So at this stage, the parents are exhausted and exasperated because they just think, this is really, this is not going to work. What are we going to do to fix the kids? Now, then we have Vitelli comes in to, I think, to say thank you to Lucio, who he thinks is Lucio, for saving him. I don't know what he thinks is going to happen after that, but anyway, he asks Bobadilla, he sees Lucio, who's now in his man's dress, and says, is that the Lucio who saved me? And Bobadilla says, no, see that girl over there? that's the Lucio who saved you. And of course, he's astonished and instantly smitten by this, by Clara, who's now in girl's clothes, but with all her former spirit. And he thanks her and talks to her, and she's equally struck with him because he puts up a good sword. And they are really very open about being very keen on each other, to the point where he asks her for a favour. Now, a favour in this context is it's kind of a medieval through to early modern thing, where a woman would give a man a very personal item that shows that she has made a connection with him, and he would keep it and wear it, and it is a way of him pledging himself to her. So it's quite a serious thing. It's usually a very small, seemingly trivial but very personal item, like a glove or a ribbon, something like that. But this being Clara, of course, she ends up giving Vitelli her sword. So things look like they're going well for them there, but what she finds out quite soon from Bobadilla and Piorato is that, you guessed it, Vitelli is not worthy of her, because he actually is currently keeping a mistress elsewhere. And she recklessly asks Piorato to take her to observe this, so she can convince herself that that he really is two-timing her. So this is basically what happens next. Vitelli goes to see Malroda, who, and they just, all these two do is quarrel and scrap and manipulate each other, and it's really not a healthy relationship. And so while he's doing that, he is set upon by the low-life figures that I mentioned earlier, because really their whole plan with getting Vitelli to come to the corrupt constable's house to see Malroda is to give them the opportunity to rob him, basically. So Piorato has brought Clara to observe this. She's up above watching this. And of course, being Clara, she just can't help herself, and she jumps in, and despite the compromising circumstances, saves Vitelli's ass again. And he is humiliated about having her having seen him courting Malroda, but they kiss and make up, basically. So they've decided that, well, he's reformed as she is. Her passions have made her feel womanly for the first time, and his have made him feel like not a jerk for the first time, it seems. So they are now a couple. But now we have to, oh, I missed a bit that's important, oh dear. There was a little scene that gets Vitelli freed up to go and see Malroda, and it's basically he's walking with his friend Lamoral, who we met right at the beginning, and his sister, Genevora. Of course there has to be a sister. Now, he knows Lamoral likes Genevora, so he persuades Genevora to let Lamoral escort her home to give his friend the chance to hit on his sister, and himself the chance to go off and see Malroda, which is the part I've already explained. So let's cut back to what's happened to the others. Alvarez and Piorato have just about given up on Lucio. Alvarez is an absolute jerk, may I say, because he's just dreadful to his children, and everybody's extremely misogynist and homophobic about Lucio's effeminate tendencies. And Alvarez now gets to the point where he says, unless the next man and woman we see, unless you fight the man and ravish the woman, he doesn't actually use the word ravish, he says, use her in a manly fashion. It's something like that, which Lucio doesn't really understand what he's supposed to do with that. Unless you do that with the next people who show up, you're disowned. And of course, who do you think the next people who show up are? Of course, it's Lamoral and Genevora. Now, the Genevora and Lucio actually like each other right off the bat, and she gives him a glove as a favour, a much more conventional favour. But then Lamoral, observing this, is cranky and challenges Lucio and fights him and gets the glove from him. And Genovora's just so appalled at what a wuss Lucio is. She kind of says, oh, well, I suppose that's that then, and heads off with Lamoral. Now, Lucio, of course, has been similarly struck by Genovora, just as his sister was with her brother, and it hardens his resolve. And so he pursues them, finds Lamoral, fights him, gets from him the glove back, but also Lamoral's hat and his sword. And Lamoral says, well, you may as well finish me now, because it's the only honourable thing to do, given that you're going to publish to the town that you defeated me. Just end it now. And Lucio's like, I'm not going to do that. Why on earth would I do that? In fact, here, have my hat and my sword, and, I'll just take yours because I need them to go make up with Genovora. Off you go. I won't mention this to anyone. And this next thing is probably the most genuinely subversive thing in the play, because after Lucio leaves, Lamoral reflects on the fact that Lucio's version of manly honour is in fact superior to his, you might think. He sort of says, I'm going to have to stop and consider whether that is actually the more honourable, more noble way to be a man. There you go. Now, at this point, Vitelli pops in and says to Lamoral, okay, we've got to get this revenge thing with Alvarez sorted. I'm going to challenge him to a duel. Will you be my second? Lamoral says, yes, okay, I'm up for that. Lucio goes and finds Genovora and lays his trophies at her feet and begs a kiss of her. They are, she's delighted now that her lover has turned out to be a proper man, and they are now a couple. So all that's left to happen, because I think after the ruckus with the lowlifes attacking Vitelli, basically Malroda and Piorato decide that she's better off without Vitelli, and and Piorato will actually marry her instead of just keeping her. And so they're going to do that and run off and live happily ever after. So they're taken care of. So now Clara and Vitelli are openly into each other. Lucio and Genovora are openly into each other. But Vitelli and Alvarez still have a sworn enmity that needs resolution. So here we are at the climactic scene, and what happens here is the governor of Sevilla comes in and is terribly official about the whole thing, says, for too long the bad blood between these two equally noble families has created strife in my town. We're going to get all of this out and sorted right now. So they are... they're going to have a duel. It's very official. Lucio is Alvarez's second. Lamoral is Vitelli's second. They're going to fight to the death. Off you go. Now, the women who have been communicating with each other, there has been mention of letters running between them for a couple of scenes. The women then enter together and beg the men to stop. So this is Eugenia, Clara, and Genovora, who's basically saying, Clara, you're my sister now. As far as I'm concerned, your brother is my husband, and my brother is your husband, and we're on the same side now. So the women say, they have long, beautiful speeches begging the men to not be idiots, which work not at all. And so then in a prearranged move, they call for Bobadilla, who brings in 2 swords and a pistol. He gives the pistol to Eugenia and the swords to the 2 girls. The girls just place the swords to each other's breasts and say, the minute you fight, and hurt each other, we run each other through. And then it's the most spectacular Renaissance version of Game of Chicken here. The women are so obviously deadly serious and entirely prepared to go through on this that the men manage to suck up a gram of sense and say, all right, fine, we won't do it, we won't have the duel, we'll all kiss and make up, those who want to be married shall be married, and we'll all be one happy family. Now, I am all for all kinds of people making one big happy family in exactly the way that suits him. And it may look as if this play has done the usual Renaissance story thing of looking really queer during the story and then wrapping it up with a whole big heteronormative bow at the end. But if you feel like it, I suggest that you modify the ending to what suits you best, and maybe let me know in the comments how you would like this to play out.